Welcome. My name is Servas and it is Pakhuis de Zwijger, and we're talking about Charging the Commons, a new three-part series we organize in collaboration with the project Charging the Commons, which is a project, a 2-year research project developed by the Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences, Lectorate of Civic Interactive Design, in collaboration with the Advanced Center of Applied Research for Art, Design and Technology. And we are talking about commons, which is a way of collaborating with each other, of course. And the program is called BeCommoning a Common, because it's apparently not that easy to build a commons. We talk with several people here at the table here in Pakhuis, but also people in our venue itself. If you want to join us next time and you are in Amsterdam, please join us in Pakhuis de Zwijger. It's always free of charge. And at dezwijger.nl, you find all the information of where you can find it, but also, of course, on the project website of Charging the Commons. Let's start with the introduction of our wonderful speakers we have here tonight, namely Susanna Temor, and you're a researcher at the, and I have to say it correctly, a researcher at the Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences, specifically for the Civic Interaction Design Research Group. And next to you is Lucas Held, you're project manager of project coordinator at Collectieve Kracht, and you are connected to the Erasmus University in Rotterdam. On the other side is Joachim Meerker, PhD candidate urban management at the Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences, and Rinka Tjiske, associate professor housing and social sustainability at the Technical University of Delft. And to prove that you're really here, can we have a big round of applause for these wonderful people? And as I said, we're going to talk with all of them about the different aspects of their work and how they connect with this topic. But I want to share this. Please, we go in depth about this topic. But Susanna, you are connected, as I said, with this project. Why is it so important to talk about charging the commons in a broader sense, and what does the project entail?
Yes, so we have this research project at HVA, and because we observe that there is a growing number of this kind of civil initiatives in cities, not only those cities, but everywhere in the world, that citizens, but also local entrepreneurs, they get to start something, to organize something, to do together something in their neighborhood. It can be an answer to withdrawing state provisions, but also they think there is too much commercialization. They can have ideological motives. For instance, they want to have more sustainability or care for each other.
So commoning in that sense is collective responsibility, or sharing resources, sharing knowledge, and to combine something to make a community that is, for example, built on publicly sharing photos or publicly sharing knowledge or ideas or perhaps housing or anything you can think of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It can be anything what you can think of. There's all kind of assets. And it is mostly that a group of people, sometimes friends or neighbors, they get together and they feel the urgency and need. They have to respond to some kind of demand. For instance, to make a local library in the neighborhood, or to cultivate a garden, to have fresh vegetables, or maybe to care for the elderly in the neighborhood. So it's some kind of need. And so what we see is that there are a lot of this kind of initiatives, and the resource is mostly there. So they think, oh, we would like to share cars, we would like to share or to renovate an urban space close to our houses where the children can play. And they think, okay, we will do it. It is easy, we are together, we are strong. At the same time, when they start on, they see it is very complex because they have to think a range of issues.
Yeah, and tonight we're going to talk about how that is difficult in a sense, and how you should set up a commons, which is actually a modern word for a very old-fashioned way of thinking, namely as a community you share responsibility for a very important outcome. And next time, which is on November 9th, we're going to talk about how situated design methods help enable research community to reveal their shared values. So to really go deeper into the topic. And then the third episode will be in what way can technology support and empower communities to effectively govern their own organizations. So after watching these 3 episodes, or perhaps the same for me, I'll know, and hopefully people at home watching and people here in the venue watching, know how to set up a community and a commons community and to really use that skills to bring it further.
Yes, we look at the commons or commoning, this kind of initiatives from different perspectives in this project. So you just mentioned the different series, and it is very important that we deal with the initiation of such project, because so what I said, the members or people, they have an intention to do, but then they see, oh, we have to organize an awful lot of things. We only have the resource, but how we will design a local site, how we are going to make decisions together, who is going to decide. But we also have a lot of regulations and rules in the surrounding. How can we cope that? So then this is where our project started, because in the literature you see a lot of articles about commons and commoning. This is very fashionable now. It's like it's like a slogan. It is like actually grassroots initiatives, participation. It is all more or less the same synonym. And so they write a lot about, for instance, the decision-making systems, or how the motives of the people, or the contextual factors. But what we miss is that studies do not really take attention to the initiation, how such projects get off the ground from the idea, from the very first idea to get it started. So, and how it can be consolidated. And this is in
how you build a community to become the commons. And this is hard to do because otherwise it's just a random group of people. But to really change from that idea, from shared idea to like truly building a commons.
Yes, exactly. So how the becoming of a commons, when there's the path, and you have to do a lot of actions and activities and a lot of choices in this first initial path till you can consolidate your project. So we really focused on this first trajectory, and we call it the BeCommoning. And here we try to help communities, the members, but also professionals and experts who try to help such communities, because we also started to talk this kind of external actors who are really interested to give support to this kind of civic initiatives, architectures, community builders, societal organizations, to help them to facilitate, to grow, and to evolve.
And why is it then, because these things are not new, maybe the word is kind of new, also not that new anymore, but kind of. Why is it then so difficult to realize that this phase needs work? So,
Yeah, so we gave this name BeCommoning because it shows that it is an active process, how you turn idea into tangible movements and action and a project. And it is very important because this phase of BeCommoning is going to decide the later process of an initiative.
Of course,
Will it be feasible? Will it survive? How will the members cope with each other? Will they have a lot of conflicts? Can they realize their dreams and ambitions? So that's why this is crucial that we look at the very beginning, the forming, shaping stage.
It's like start of a relationship. And so you know how to, with your spouse, you start at the beginning, you have rules how you interact with each other, and you use the whole relationship. But it's the same kind of ways you interact with each other, ways you share resources, rules of engagement you have, and how you interact with each other. So it's very much a social interaction.
Yes, it's a social process,
And if you look at it because we're talking about the professionals in that sense, could you take us through, it's on the screen as well, but what kind of lessons did you learn? What kind of new things did you hope to learn for the future?
Yes, so we have made a thorough literature review, and we talked also to a lot of actors in the practice. And based on this review, we have created, we identified 3 main pillars, what you can also see there on the screen. And then we think that BeCommoning is built on these 3 pillars. It's a process. The first is the resource itself. This is in the middle. This is orange. For instance, a garden, a car, or a residential building. On the left is the community itself. And on the right, you see the whole contextual factor. So the larger institutional, social, economic, spatial conditions of an initiatives of members.
Yeah. So the community design is how you engage with each other.
Yeah, so so actually this is an ongoing process. You also see the arrows. So it is not a linear process, but it is going on, continuously feeding each other. And yes, the community design is about that members or people who want to do something together, collective initiation, they really think about the values, their values and their preferences, ambitions. For instance, you hear a lot sustainability or affordability of housing. So it is important that they also align those values, because those values can be really diverse, which can mean that later on they will have a lot of conflicts, or they will not understand each other, or they will not be able to realize their ambitions, their common goals. So the value articulation means also that they align, and it can also be that, for instance, and value can mean, one certain value can mean different things for different persons. For instance,
you have to make sure that you speak the same language,
exactly.
Not literally Dutch or English, but you speak at least the same kind of, you know what it means when you talk about commoning, and you know what you expect from each other, so you don't have problems down the road that you don't expect.
Yes, you go below beyond this shallow articulations, like big broad terms.
And then the research design?
And then, and for the community design, it is still important also that the community is built. So there is a strong community. And of course, when people co-create, co-produce something together, there will be some kind of natural flow that they are going to grow towards each other. But many times, for instance, in co-housing processes, it is a very laborious and long, tiring process, and many times there are phases of silence. So there is nothing to do. People are waiting for decisions from the municipality, and it can mean that enthusiasm is going to be reduced. So you have to organize social processes continuously to be aware of the community spirit should be there and should be animated.
And let's not go into detail of every aspect on the slide, but if we go to the resource design, so what should we think about there?
Yes, so the resource design, so it is the resource itself and all related issues. And it is very important that the values that the people and members articulated among themselves, they can translate these values and ambitions into the tangible design of the resource. So, for instance, how can we build the residence, our co-housing residence? How should be the space divided between private or collective spaces? For instance, if you have a very high level of collectivity, you decide with the group, you want to have a lot of collective spaces within the building. And maybe you are going to limit the private spaces. No wash machine, no kitchen, but you are going to place everything. But it depends on the group. So the members should continuously discuss this with each other.
So what resources are subject to the common, which we're building, okay. And then the design context?
The design context is, of course, how a group can cope and maneuver around institutional, for instance, rules or legislation. So there are a lot of requirements, so that how can a group can, for instance, submit a tender that also use the language of the municipality of requirements.
So that means if you talk about, for example, you want to start a co-living group, then you start with, okay, we want to have this community under these rules. Then you look at the resources, money, but also stones, houses, these kind of things. And then you try, if you submit a proposal and you work with neighbors or with the city government, you try to frame it in such a way that the rest of the world understands what you're talking about, at least for the things that it matters for the rest of the world.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So it is this translation, what I mean. So you see the translation from both sides, from the context toward the design. And also it is very important that the group members, they are trying to find allies, because they need a lot of resources, knowledge, skills, planning, expertise, but also land, for instance, if it is. So the coalition building means in this sense that they go and make partnerships with different types of actors. So that's crucial moment.
And if you want to know more about this, you can go to chargingthecommons.nl for more information, and you can see this wonderful slide in more detail. And if you want to connect with you, can I give your email address?
Yes.
Yeah. That is.
It's there on the
Z. But people can't see it at home. So z.tomor@HVA. So that's the Dutch abbreviation of Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences.nl, HVA.nl. We'll put it on the website. Thank you so much. It's a way of thinking about building together, of sharing resources, and then making sure that you work together, and that is the longevity is there, that you keep on understanding each other, and in the end also make sure that you get the permits when you need permits, so you can collaborate with other organizations in society as a broader spectrum. And if you look at professionals in that sense, so I can understand how it works for people who want to do it in their spare time or a housing project. But if you want, as a professional, try to share resources when it comes to journalism, for example, this is also applicable for them.
Yeah, actually, we would like to support professionals. So this kind of enablers or moderators, we still have to find a name for them, who would like to stimulate and facilitate this common initiative. So this framework is a tool also to help them to have a good overview, what steps and actions will be taken. And of course, they can also adjust to the specific types of initiatives, because car sharing is totally different, like energy cooperatives or co-housing. But this framework gives a general good overview, and it is still a work in progress. So we keep having a feedback from other people also this evening.
People here at the table,
and so.
But you need both professionals who use commoning in their work, and you need professional commoners, people who are commoning in that sense. So people who want to make it, to really showcase the way of working and collaborating with each other.
Yeah, many times that you see that citizens who start this kind of initiatives, they have a certain level of expertise. They are skilled, they are very motivated. That you see, but still they lack other types of knowledge and resources and skills. That, for instance, financing, or for instance, how to make a conflict resolution scheme, or social aspects or architectural views. So this is also actually, the last week we were in Strasbourg in a conference, and we had a debate. Is this, maybe it will be a new profession. It will be a new type of work, this kind of networking, enabling sort of, facilitators. So that is still a question also to the other guests here, I think.
Joachim, if you listen to this, is this clear? Is it? Of course, it's part of your job and part of your research, but
I
you agree with
Is
it? how would you explain it to the broader public that they should really use this way of working?
This framework.
Yeah. Well, do you agree with the framework?
Well, it has. I work from another perspective, or with other frameworks.
We'll go into detail on your project later, but it's.
Yeah. But there's a lot of a lot of common concepts or common perspectives on how the dynamics within this group works, how it works to manage a resource together with these people, how they involve with institutional organizations like a municipality, etc. So it's I recognize a lot, and it's I think these kind of instruments, they can really help to sort of make clear what you thought was obvious, but wasn't that obvious at all. And at the moment that you start using these kind of frameworks to actually address particular problems you find in the process of commoning, you can really pinpoint what is going on. We saw that in our project as well, like using specific ideas to about the dynamics of collaboration helps you to see that a particular conflict wasn't about a situation in that moment, but was sort of the result of a history of conflicts years ago. And if you use that kind of research ideas to look at situations and to make a thorough analysis of the situations that you're in, and it's not the work of researchers, it's also the type of analysis that professionals can do. It really helps you to go a step further than doing whatever you did before.
Yeah, so in a sense, it's about making things obvious that seem to be obvious but are not obvious. So try to really, first of all, make sure that people see that it's harder than it seems to be, and then make sure that the solutions are obvious in that sense.
So there's a lot of things that you can easily overlook because you think you already have an explanation. And then you start using these kind of perspectives, and then you see, okay, I thought I had an explanation, but maybe thinking about it twice, I have a different explanation. Actually, that different explanation, that new explanation, leads to a solution.
Davinka, how's that for you? Do you also recognize what Susanna is sharing?
Yeah, indeed, the framework makes a lot of sense. My field is actually housing, collaborative housing processes, and indeed, I mean, if the framework is not anymore on the screen, but well, if we remember the three, there it is, thanks, the three, let's say, circles and the subcircles. I would say that in housing, this happens in a very organic and sometimes even chaotic way. You know, I mean, there's not a progression. I don't know if the linear, the alignment of the circles is supposed to be one thing leads to the other, and there are let's say, feedback loops between them. But for instance, in housing, when I was looking at this for the first time, I thought, well, but a lot of the what needs to happen in the resource design stage is determined by the design context. If you don't have the financing in place, if you don't have a plot of land or at least a building to redevelop when it's an adaptive reuse project, for instance, if you don't have support from the local authority, etc., you cannot even start planning your project, you know, on the architecture of it. So it happens, as I say, in a very uncontrolled way, and that makes it even more complex to manage.
So it's extra important to make sure that you start with the commoning in a good way and make a good framework in that sense. Luckily, we have several examples here today about how we can really go into detail in these kind of topics. And we, as I told you, we already heard from Joachim Drinka, but we also have Lucas here, Lucas Held. And as I said, you are a project coordinator at Collectieve Kracht, which is a knowledge platform for citizens collective. Correct. So this should sound for you as a as being home and really understanding. Do you work via the same framework as Susanna was explaining?
We're connected to Erasmus University, as you said, and the group of Tine de Moor. Tine has also developed a framework which I think contains a lot of the same elements, slightly different arrangement, as Joachim also mentioned. But I think at the core is a very similar thinking, very similar story, if you want. So definitely very recognizable in the elements and how they interact and yeah, for sure.
Could you tell us a bit more about collectieve kracht? What is it? It means collective power in Dutch, but it's as I said, a platform.
So it's a platform for Dutch citizen collectives. So all our content is also produced in Dutch, and it's initiated by Professor Tine de Moor, who is now at the Erasmus University, because she saw the need to make evidence-based knowledge and methods available to citizen collectives, to really allow them or enable them to build on their collectives, work on them, and become resilient, sustainable, durable organizations. And we try to make that knowledge that researchers, like the people sitting around the table here, make that really available and applicable to practice for the collectives. We do that through webinars, online or online and offline events, infographics, podcast series. So we do that for a broad coalition of players or actors in the field. So for the collectives themselves, but also for politicians, for investors, and of course the researchers, and tried really to bring those groups together.
And what we're talking about today can be quite broad. A lot of topics can be covered with a collected or with a commons. So what kind of groups should we think about? Is it?
Yeah, so our of collectieve kracht is also is intentionally set up cross-sectoral, so all sectors, and we already have heard of a lot of them, that where we see a lot of commons, or as we call them, citizen collectives, are emerging and have emerged, are represented. So, I mean, you can think about energy collectives, food collectives, houses, mobility, anything where resource can be shared.
So in energy collective, for example, is you share energy production.
Yes.
Or you share food production, or you share cars to have a mobile sharing system. Yeah.
So citizen collectives, in our perspective and how we view them, is where consumers become prosumers, so consumers and producers of a service or a good, because they either the good or the service is not available through the market or offered by the from the public side, or maybe it's not produced in a way that fits their values. So in that sense, then consumers or citizens take action and produce those resources in a way that is more aligned with their own value and norms.
So, for example, people join an energy collective because of their apartment complex. They needed to generate electricity. And then there is a evident need to join this collective.
There can be, various reasons and motivations to join different types of collectives. So if you talk about energy collectives, for example, quite often we see, of course, that they are drawn in by that it's green energy, that it's local energy, but sometimes for some of them also just it's a matter of stable prices in a very volatile market, as we've seen in the last couple of years. So because then the collective, of course, is not set up, and that separates it from market parties, to create a profit, but it's created to just produce the energy that its members need. So it's less volatile in that sense, in terms of pricing. So there can be very different motivations.
And do the motivations have to be value-based, or can it also be economic-based?
I think it can definitely be both. So there's a great variety, and especially, if you look across sectors, it's also very different. But I think what unites us, most of the members, is that they want to solve a societal issue, and that they want a certain control over the way the service or product is produced that fits really with their own value or their own values and norms.
What makes this difficult? Why is it less obvious? Because we've been talking about the whole night tonight. So why is it difficult to make these kind of connections?
Well, compared to we are used to thinking in market terms, so that there's a company or more companies produce a good, so there's a very clear one party and the consumer just takes that good. So that's a very clear sort of relationship. But now the consumer becomes also the producer, and they also do that together. That's what the essence of common, of course. So the once this shared resource is created, it needs to be clear in terms of the rules and who can use it, how you can use it, how often you can use it, and that's just very complicated. So we talk about institutions for collective action in that sense. So there needs to be a clear set of rules, norms, values also shared, and I think that's also reflected in the framework that Susanna presented to really regulate this interaction of the members of the collective.
Yeah, and you've been developing a new instrument within your network that is discrete choice experiment. What does that? Yeah, I know the compound words. I know what the words mean, but what does it mean?
So I mean, that's an example of where we want to really bring together collectives and researchers, because we as researchers need data from the collectives so that so that we can work with them. At the same time, we also think there's a lot of knowledge need for evidence-based, so scientific knowledge for the collectives. And the way this discrete choice experiment basically works is the members of a collective are presented with a series, so multiple choices between two hypothetical collectives that they could join, and the two alternatives always differ on a couple of attributes. So if you go back to the energy collective, price, whether it's local energy, whether it's green energy, and if they have social events that bring the whole community together, for example. Mm-hmm. And then the members sort of are confronted with a series of slightly always different choices between two different type of collectives that they can choose which they would prefer of the two. And after repeating this a couple of times, the choice or the algorithm, if you want, behind the experiment can very exactly tell the preferences of the members of a collective, what are actually the driving forces to stay within the collective, how they relate to each other, and what weight they carry in this decision. So it allows the collective to really understand why the members remain members.
So not because I can understand why for you it would be interesting, because it's like brilliant data and
sure.
like a gold mine, but at the same time it helps then the collective itself to really understand themselves.
So the way we've set it up in this concrete example is that the members of a collective fill in the data, so the researcher gets the data, but at the other hand, at the end of the process, the collective itself gets an automated report that sort of very nicely presents the output of this experiment amongst its members, so that they really clearly know, okay, is it price that drives people to remain, or is it because we offer clean energy? And then they can make also their, for example, investment decisions or other decisions based on that true motivation, because it really uncovers, compared to like a traditional survey, it uncovers also sort of hidden motivations of people, because they're not asked to rank on 1 to 10, but they're really asked to compare two things and choose one. And that, if you repeat that, it really allows you to see what is truly driving their motivation, and that helps the collective to make decisions based on that. What do our members actually expect from us?
Yeah, can you also do this in an iterative way, in a sense that when you have a group of people that are not really a collective yet, but you want to build a collective from it, that you sort of use this survey to start community building?
Yeah, so the methodology would have to be adjusted a little bit behind it, but there is potential for that, of course.
Nice.
Yep.
So you filter out groups that are claiming to be collective but are not collective, and groups that are not claiming to be collective that are actually collectives. But and you're talking about citizen engagement and citizen collectives that are driven by need or value, in a sense, but that is not per se a group of professionals. So how do you bring professionalism into that?
Well, I think as Susanna also already touched upon, especially in the early phases, collectives are quite often driven by not non-professionals, but people who are working on a voluntary basis, basically, or working, is that even maybe not the right term, but are engaged on a voluntary basis. And that also makes these organizations, if there are even organizations, very fragile.
Yeah.
And what we see is that professionals that have been through the process, have maybe a certain number of contacts and know which regulations apply, etc., that have carry this knowledge, can stabilize this process. So I think there is a certain role for professionals, but of course it needs to be carried and driven by the community itself.
Yeah, so to give an example, and please tell me if I have the wrong example, but a homeowners association who needs to put green energy in their apartment complex, that is a group driven by need and perhaps value, but they do have an added value into their project when someone like you or another person who has interest or works in this topic on a professional level is integrated in that. So they need to seek out help. Is that the way to look at it?
Well, I think we wouldn't consider that the group of homeowners per se a collective, but I think...
What is a better example?
Well, I mean, if we want to stay with the energy collective, I think that's a more clear, or the housing project that Darinka works on.
Mm-hmm.
So where people really come together to create a source, a shared resource. But the question is, do they need it? I don't think they need it per se, but it can help through some troubles.
It helps them with the process.
Yeah. In the process. And I mean, the challenges they face are also can differ per sector, per type of organization. So the type of person you need to solve your specific problem or the challenges that specific collective faces probably differs also per collective.
And your organization, of course, you help them with these questionnaires and to really go into depth. What other things can you offer?
So we, as I said, we try to sort of translate scientific knowledge into practical knowledge. But so that's the one thing that we discussed. The other thing that we're really active on is organizing dialogue around citizen collectives, that is bringing together different stakeholder groups of people or groups that are interested in it, from the public administration side, from financial parties, network organizations, and scientists, to really bring them together to further that dialogue, to understand how can we create a more systematic place for citizen collectives in our society and economy, because we now see quite often it's either market or public, but citizens together doing something that is still sort of the exception and something that is looked upon as a little bit, oh, well, that's cute and small, but how big is the actual economic impact? And we think it can be quite big. So we try to organize the dialogue between all these parties to share the knowledge. Yeah.
And Susanna, what can we learn from... of course, you learned a lot already. That's why we're here. And the example, Lucas. But what can we learn in creating the commons? And what did you learn in building this from the example of Lucas?
Of course, that this is very specific, as Lucas also said, very specific elements on different domains. An energy cooperative is totally different than an housing corporation, so it should be adjusted. But also, I think the governance issue, so that is in the orange circle, it is a main element. To define and to deliberate about the style that the group members would like to manage.
Yeah, so the internal governance,
Yeah, decision making, how we are going to vote, and what are the rights and duties of the members. So this is a crucial element of sharing and managing.
Thanks. Yeah. And Joachim, as I said, you are a PhD candidate at urban management from the University of Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences, and you carried out an action research project in Amsterdam New West in Plein 4045, and your research project was Zero Waste Lab Initiative. Can you tell us a bit more? You brought along beautiful pictures. It is.
No, this is not beautiful.
Well,
this one is
well, the previous one, it is beautiful. It is
market.
if you like pixels.
Well, okay, yeah, the quality of the picture, that's something different. But the market itself is quite nice, actually.
Yeah, it is.
It is in New West.
It's a great place.
Why this specific market and this specific square?
Whew. That's a story that actually started already before I started my research project there. We were interested in this concept of urban commons, in this concept of about how stakeholders in a city can jointly manage the resource that they are jointly dependent on. We were working with Christian Iona and Sheila Foster. They're both a professor, one in Italy and the other one in New York, and they started a LabGov initiative, and that was sort of a laboratory to find out how you can manage an urban commons, or how you can
LabGov initiative. That's a new word, but it helps in that way to
Yeah, they had a projects in Bologna, particularly, and in New York, and they experimented with all kinds of methods to help citizens initiatives mainly to organize themselves and to work in collaboration with the government to jointly manage a square in Bologna, for example, or in New York. They wanted to make available the Wi-Fi connections in, I think it was Harlem or something like that.
Yeah. And then why Plein 4045, so 4045, square?
Yeah, we had I knew some people there. And then
it's available, good example.
We started working there and thinking about, okay, what can we do with this square? Actually, the square Plein 4045, the plan was to regenerate the square and renovate the buildings and the whole surroundings, etc. So we thought, like, maybe that's an opportunity to do that with this idea of the urban commons, because the municipality wanted to do it in a participative way.
Yeah.
But then after a period, it was sort of complicated. But I knew somebody who was working there, Redouan.
Yeah.
And he was working for the municipality, but with the people from the market. And he met a group of people, entrepreneurs on the market, and they had the idea that the market is very much regulated in Amsterdam. And these entrepreneurs, they thought, like, okay, the municipality is doing a lot to regulate the market, but we think we can do a better job.
Yeah.
And for example, in relation to the to waste processing, there was a lot of cost for them for their waste processing that was organized by the municipality, and what they saw is, like, all this waste is just collected and then brought to the incinerator, and we think we can do more with it because there's a lot of materials that it could be reused for energy production, for all the other kinds of things. And
so they were obliged to take a service from the city government to collect the waste.
Yeah.
And so there is both an economic need, there was a value need because they wanted to do it better than that the city government did it. And so how did it land? How did you get that off the ground?
They also thought, like, it was a very good idea to start the Zero Waste Lab project, because they thought, like, it would be a marketing tool.
Yeah.
So they could be the first market that was totally circular in the Netherlands. And then Redouan, he offered them to help them to get things done, because obviously the municipality was already organizing it. So they had to arrange a lot of things with the municipality to organize it in a different way. And in the end, that was really, really difficult. And I thought it was going to be a very interesting project to follow and to help with in terms of urban commons, because it was clear that they had some kind of a shared resource that they wanted to do something with it. But it was also very exciting because the group of entrepreneurs is a very difficult group to get them to work together.
Yeah.
They mostly work for themselves and not for each other. And but they had a common interest. There were a lot of other businesses around the square that also needed to cooperate in some kind of way. There were initiatives of residents in the area that were already working on improving the square in terms of littering and waste. And then there was the municipality, which made it really complex.
but everybody was looking at the same direction. Everybody wanted to have a nicer living environment and healthier living environment.
That's correct. They all
And
wanted that.
Could you bring this back? Well, so this is a commons. I wanted to ask you, is this a commons? But it's quite obvious that this is a commons. But is
But
this...
to me, I'm a bit hesitant to talk about it in a way that this is a commons, this is not a commons. And for me, commons is a sort of analytical perspective to look at it and to understand what is happening in practice just a little bit better and to help it actually, because they are not a commons, they are just entrepreneurs organizing waste.
Yeah, but they're a group of people who try to share resources and to tackle a problem
That's how we
in
can
a
talk about it.
communicative way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the difference then there? So this is, they're not aware that they're commons or they're not a commons?
Well, actually, they're not. They wouldn't call themselves like, "Oh, we are a commons now." But
No.
if you start talking about commons and the concepts and the ideas that are behind it, you can help them to understand their own practice a bit better. So, if, for example, if you use the idea that if you make rules with the community that is subject to that rules, then those rules will be lived up to in a better way. If you use that kind of ideas, which come from the tradition of commons, they start recognizing patterns that they see around it. Like, okay, for example, the municipality, they had all kinds of rules that the entrepreneurs had to live up to, and but nobody was doing that.
No.
And then when they started to design rules together with these entrepreneurs, all of a sudden the entrepreneurs were matching those rules. They were living up to those rules. So using those kind of ideas to help them understand what they are doing and help them create new ways of working in their own practice, it helps to further and to reach their goals.
What was your role in this project?
As an action researcher, what I did is I was continuously sort of talking with them and sort of observing what they were doing, and I was giving them reflections on my interpretations of what they were doing, and sort of giving them ideas or tools or ways to understand what they are doing, so they can actually transform it.
How welcome were your reflections? Were you invited to give the
Well, it took a lot of time to build a relationship of trust.
Yeah.
And because that's the basis if you want to, as a researcher, you want to do action research and you want to work with people. Yeah, it takes a lot of time to just hang around, talk with people, and familiarize yourself with them, and build a relationship where you can actually, if you say something like, okay, I see you do this, maybe you can do it in another way. I mean, normally they would say, yeah, okay.
Get away from me. Yeah. But so you became part of the community in a sense?
More or less, but you remain an outsider, of course, but up to a certain point. Yeah.
And what kind of structures did you see that you could learn also looking at what Susanne told us? So what kind of reflections would you take along from this process if other markets in the world want to follow the same example?
Yeah, many different things. First, and I think that is that really relates to the idea of BeCommoning, and the framework that was shared. You have to realize in an urban setting, it's actually quite difficult to build a collaboration. I mean, the idea of the commons is very old. The idea of a collective of people managing a shared resource, it's an ancient idea.
The waterboards in that sense are the waterboards in the Netherlands to as a community build the dikes and maintain them.
Yeah.
would be a commons in that sense.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, if you go to England
Yeah.
and you see street names or you see street signs with the commons. I mean, it's just places that were shared amongst people and that they had to manage together. And it's a very old idea, but the idea of the commons has been mainly used in rural settings, in settings where there was sort of a homogeneous way of using that resource, and where there's not a lot of diversity amongst the people.
So a lot of shared culture, shared equity, shared everything.
Exactly, and if you take that idea of collective management, of collective action to the city, and you put it in a community that is very diverse, a community that is very big,
Yeah.
a community that changes all the time. It becomes a completely different story for the market, for example. I mean, you start with a group of entrepreneurs, but you start doing something on a square that a lot of other people feel that it's their square as well. So your group keeps on growing, and it keeps on growing with people that have different interests, that have different ways of looking at the square. For some people, it's a place for the market. For others, it's a place for leisure. For others, it's a hub in a public transport network, etc., etc. So there's a lot of different ideas on what this square should be. And if you want to build a collaboration, one of the things that you need to do is bring those people together and make them understand that they have these different ideas. And that actually, if they talk about the square, they are not talking about the same thing per se.
So you have to make it obvious that they're not talking about the same things to make sure that they can talk about the same things.
It's
and to
very
understand
easy
each other.
to argue about
Yeah.
what needs to be done with the square if one is talking about a marketplace and the other one is talking about, area for festivals or a place of remembrance.
One last question on this topic. So what is now different, because the project is been around for a while, what is now different on this market than before the Zero Waste Lab initiative started? So is there literally, so you can't get these plastic bags anymore, perhaps? What in the practical sense?
I don't know in this tangible kind of way, but we invested a lot of time in building community amongst the entrepreneurs.
Uh-huh.
And what we saw happening is that while these entrepreneurs were sort of, they said hello in the morning to each other, but they weren't really connected. And I think one thing they did achieve is that they really built a collective, and they actually had now share ideas and create a common agenda for what they want to achieve and what they want to do.
So the main difference is the community became a proper community where people can find each other.
Yeah, but still the actually organizing collective waste management, for example, they did achieve a lot, but they didn't really finalize the Zero Waste Lab because the collaboration with the municipality was very, very difficult. And which is very logical, I think.
It is, but it's a bit of a shame that, or am I too critical now?
I don't know. I mean,
It would start. Well, let me say, but from my perspective, it's you've been working in a community together to get something done, and then you bump up until the last, like, making sure that you translate from your community to the government. But perhaps that's a topic for a different evening. But
I think, but it's the same part of the same process of BeCommoning.
Yeah,
is that the municipalities in urban areas have a big influence. They are a very big party. I mean,
of course,
everything that the urban space is so contested that we need government to sort of arrange everything in the city. So there's a big tradition of people going to a government asking to sort of arrange how public space, for example, can and cannot be used. And there's a big tradition in government to, well, first it was looking at the government as a party that arranges everything. And then new public management entered the area, and then they started privatizing a lot of things and were working with market parties. And now there's a shift towards collaboration with citizens. But still, there's a lot of heritage in the governmental organization that is used to do things top down, is used to do things with privatization and working with market parties. And now they have to work in a different way. And so they really need to relearn how to do that. And also to sort of think about what should remain in the organization of this previous ways of working, because they didn't develop those kind of ways, those ways of working to frustrate people. They did it to sort of create a just society. And
to be effective and have effective government in that sense.
I don't think it's something to make fun of. I think it's.
I don't think I'm making fun of it, but it's.
No, I think it's. There's very good reasons behind the way that the government and municipalities are organized. But if you want to do it in a different way, then you sort of become aware of the way why you are organized in a specific way in order to be able to change that.
Thank you. That is quite clear. And I think we need to talk about this topic more often, but on a later date, not tonight, because we have to go to you, Drinka. Drinka Tjiske, you're in 2 weeks' time, you're launching your new book here in Pakhuis. So if you want to join Drinka and us then at that evening to talk about her book, look at thezwijger.nl and you can join us then. And your research and your book is about collective housing, which is also a quite old concept. It's not something new that you collectivize housing.
Indeed.
Can you tell us a bit about your project and about your research?
Sure. Well, first of all, researchers are a little bit hung up on terminology and concepts. I don't want to bore you, but I think it's important to start by defining what we understand by collaborative housing or collaborative living, which I use more or less as synonymous. We gave the title to our book in English, Towards Collaborative Housing. Living, because we wanted to talk more than housing as a, shelter, as a box, let's say. Often in housing studies or housing policy, we tend to do that. We tend to look at houses as a product, as an object. But in my work, I adopt a more holistic perspective, more integrative perspective with the living environments. So we wanted to reach that scope. And the other thing is that, I wrote the book in English, but we wanted to have it also in Dutch to reach out to the Dutch community, because we have a housing crisis in this country, and
we do,
quite unprecedented. And we wanted to propose ways in which we can look at collaborative living forms as a solution to many of the housing challenges that we're facing, by looking at examples from other countries, but also from the Netherlands, because indeed there are lots of citizen collectives or groups of people who want to co-create their living environments and their houses together. And hence the title in Dutch was collectief wonen.
That's what I wanted to go to, because the collective versus collaborative.
Yes.
What is the difference between the two?
Well, it has to do with the language and culture. I'm part of a working group with researchers from across Europe who started working about a decade ago on comparative research on these ways of life or ways of producing housing. And we realized it was a wide variety of terms being used interchangeably: co-housing, cooperatives, collective living, collaborative living. And then we embark on this conceptualization effort to understand really what are we talking about and how do these different models differ from each other in different contexts, and also what do they have in common.
So it's not just cultural difference between, for example, the Netherlands and United States or Britain, but it's also it's a way of looking between university or researchers, looking at the topic at hand. Because for me, collaborative sounds active.
Indeed.
While collective is more passive.
Indeed, and this is precisely one of the discussions we've had. You see, in English, in the English language, when you say collaborative, it implies the action of cooperation, collaboration, and that's what we want to see. We want to see something in action. However, when we say collaborative wonen in Dutch, my Dutch native speaker colleagues, they said, nah, that doesn't exist. But if we talk about collective wonen, that kind of... So I have to trust them on this. Yeah. But of course, it's very difficult to find the right term. Now, what's important to understand is we adopted this umbrella term to encompass a wide variety of ways of collectively self-organizing housing.
Yeah.
And there are many models, and in that slide there you can see a schematic overview that we have done for the so-called global north, you see, because let's not forget that collective living or collaborative living forms have existed for ages in different parts of the world. But our research started to focus on Europe. Why? Because we saw that in advanced societies, let's say post-capitalist societies, we started to see decades ago already a housing crisis. Yeah. So what is going on there? So I started my work from the realization that the traditional or conventional ways of providing housing and the housing institutions are falling short to respond to a number of new demands from the population. Yeah. And at the same time, I started to realize, to look around and say, well, there are lots of people who are taking matters in their own hands, not just by themselves, finding their own way into, a housing solution, but doing it collectively. And I became fascinated by that. What's in there? What's in it? Because it's growing. We see more and more interest, not only in terms of number of initiatives, but also in terms of research, publications. Everyone started to suddenly rediscover that this can be something.
Yeah. And how do you set that up? So how do you design such a group? I need a house. Of course, everybody does. That's the need. So you start working together with people to create that. Other people also need that. But how do you kickstart such a process?
Well, if you go maybe to the previous slide where this is kind of I really like to show you the collaborative living, the 5 defining characteristics, because people often ask us, but is co-living the same or is co-housing the same? And I say, well, we have come up through a lot of research, literature review, etc., with 5 defining characteristics of collaborative living. The first thing is that it's intentional. So people who share a house because they have no alternative, they are excluded from the housing market, they don't qualify for social housing or whatever, they are not living collaboratively. You have to want it. You have to deliberately choose to work with other people and have another of the 5 characteristics, a common vision. So we go back to what Susanna was saying and Lucas was saying before, the common values. And this is something that they have in common with other fields of collectives. People come together because they share a certain way of looking at the world, and also in the case of housing, a way in which they want to actually live, literally live, the materiality of the house, the design, the degree of sharing with others, and that's something they share with each other.
So it could be in a level of sharing a kitchen in that sense, but it doesn't have to be.
It's important to understand that in collaborative housing or living, there's a continuum of, user involvement and also of sharing. You can go from projects where there's very little sharing, very little social interaction, to projects where there's a very high degree of sharing and community intention. And, well, we have the sharing there also as another characteristic, the high level of resident involvement, more so than in conventional housing. And the most difficult one, collective decision-making. Yeah. Because when you think from a perspective of an architect, for instance, when an architect or an urban design firm, they have one client, right? Mostly one is the client that commissions the building. Imagine when you have 30 clients, and they have to agree with each other what they want to build, how it's going to look, what color, what material. it can be a nightmare for a professional working with a group. This is why the group needs to be very, very aligned in what they want. And that's where the group process comes in. That's where in your scheme, I think the first circle, community design. You first need to become a community. You need to get to know the other people if you don't know them already. And there's a lot of falling out. There's a lot of projects that don't see the light of day because it's a very difficult, time-consuming, effort-consuming process.
Yeah.
But people to make it to the end usually have very high levels of satisfaction.
And to really make it clear, so if a group of people ask an architect and builder to make an apartment complex or a group of
Usually
houses
to co-design.
to co-design
Yes.
this whole project, do they also have to live together then in one sense or another afterwards? So
Yes.
it can't be collective. I can't think of the English word, but collectief opdrachtgeverschap. So it can't be collective.
It's interesting you mentioned that because we've debated a lot with Dutch colleagues whether
Joachim, what's the word for that in English?
CPO, CPC, collective private commissioning.
Thank you.
Yes. It might or might not. It all depends if the project actually has also the intention to do things together after they have moved in, the residents inhabit the building, and if they have shared rooms, for instance.
Yeah.
In that case, it also can be considered collaborative living.
So there
But
has
are
to be a
many
shared
projects-
aspect for the longer term.
Yes, indeed.
But then it has to be. Sorry, Joachim?
Maintenance, is that enough?
Social activities, organizational activities. Of course, they've built committees to take care of the cleaning, the maintenance, to cook meals, communal meals, which is very common. Like in the Scandinavian co-housing model, eating together it's a building block of building a
So
community.
you really have to have a society where everybody is obliged to participate in that
Well,
society.
it's not. People sometimes tell me that they are obliged. They choose to participate.
Yeah, of course, but they choose to be obliged to participate. I'm trying to get to a level where we can talk, because the thing that it sounds amazing, because it sounds a good way of building a community of people you like to live together with and to share all different aspects of your life with. But it also sounds as something that is very hard to duplicate at a larger scale and to use it to solve the housing crisis, not just in the Netherlands, but all over the world, but especially in places like Amsterdam or London. But so how is this scalable? It sounds to me that's only applicable when you have the time, the knowledge, the resources to really do this. So how can you make sure that it's...
That's a very good question. A question I'm asked. I don't know how many times a day.
I'm sure, and I'm sorry about that.
No, it's okay, because that's the question. Of course, there's a challenge. My first answer is collaborative living is not going to solve the housing crisis because it's not meant to. The housing crisis can be solved by political will to implement what we already know by decades of research that works. Okay, and I can tell you about my view on that on another occasion. But collaborative living goes more into the how question, into how do we want to live together. And this is where the current supply of housing, both from the market and from the, let's say, public institutional providers, is falling short. Because we keep building the same cookie-cutter housing for a standard heterosexual traditional family. That create this monotonous, very low density, extremely inefficient neighborhoods that end up being obsolete and don't actually tackle the shortage, you see. So if we think differently about our coexistence in very limited space, we can start to see the potential of sharing things that we don't necessarily have to own individually. Does everybody need a washing machine and a dryer in their house? I don't think so. I think many people, and actually when you look at the Scandinavian countries or Switzerland or Austria, where these projects are much more mainstream than in countries like the Netherlands, there's lots of these projects who have a common laundry with, high power equipment, and people don't need to have these things themselves. This is just to give you a very like pedestrian example of that. But if you start implementing the principle of sharing on a much larger scale, you can reduce footprint environmentally, you can become more affordable, you can create more community. So there are multiple benefits, and you can see them all in the book.
Yeah, which are we going to... And what was the date again? What is
24th of October.
24th of October on deswager.nl. You can see all the information.
Pre-order now before the 24th with a little discount.
Ooh. Well, so for the commercial, but it is an unearned commercial. But if I look at my own example where I live, I share a lot of things with my neighbors, but basically only maintenance of the building and cleaning of the public spaces. That is shared. Kinda. So we need to go much further than that. And this is uncomfortable. For a lot of people, I like my neighbors, but I don't want them over every day, all the time. So it asks different way of looking and living in a city and interacting with your surroundings.
But you don't need to see them every day. Nobody forces you. Because in most collaborative living projects, you have your own private dwelling. You have everything you need. You don't need to share a bathroom if you don't want. You don't need to share a kitchen. You don't need to, interact with people. You commit to a way of life where you do have to share a number of activities to keep the community going. But you're not forced to socialize. And that's a common misconception that people think, I have to be with people the whole day. I know many people. I've done a lot of ethnographic research, stayed in these communities, eaten with them, and so on. And I've seen for myself that many of the people who live there are introverts, actually.
Yeah.
And they actually benefit from having the opportunity to socialize. Because if these people, especially older people, would live alone, it would be a disaster for their mental health, for their social life. They would never get the chance to see a living soul.
The last question for this part, and then we go to the audience because there's many things.
Can I ask something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I think that your lessons can be applied in different situations as well. Because I live in a normal house, not in an apartment building. But from all the people that I know that are living in an apartment building, being a member of a VVA is quite a drag, and no VVA is actually working.
Yeah, VVA is of course the Dutch word for homeowners association.
Yeah.
But,
and obviously they don't want to go towards collaborative living, but maybe they can learn a lot about the methods that you've written down to get this VVA actually working and accomplishing something, and maybe not being dependent on the same person for 20 years.
Yeah. I think the question answered itself.
No,
I was
wondering if
later. But I want to go to this. So how do you bring this in the context of society, where we, Joachim and I, try to understand what we're talking about? Is like when brain goes like always, and but I can imagine that in the system world, it's even more difficult to. How do you share ownership of a washing machine when it comes to taxes? How do you share? So all these things are a hassle and make it more difficult. Or
well, it is difficult in countries where there are no such frameworks. But as I already mentioned, in the
like
countries
the Netherlands,
this is why it's so difficult, because we are basically starting from scratch. I mean, it was only in 2015 when the current woonwet, so the housing law, established the possibility to form a wooncoöperatie, housing cooperative. This didn't exist before. So the Dutch society is not used to citizens or people self-organizing, particularly to build and manage housing. This is extremely revolutionary idea. But if we look at other countries, other countries also. But if we look around, there are countries in Europe not so different in terms of demographics or socioeconomic indicators from the Netherlands, where this has existed for a very long time. It works very well. There are regulations and mechanisms in place, and people who want to live like that. And let's not forget, this is not for everyone, but more people could live like this if it was facilitated. That's my belief. They can. Because the opportunities and the structures are there.
we have to make a program in Dutch about this topic for later, and we go really in depth on this. I think we have to have 4 different programs, or you go an hour or maybe 2 hours on your topic. So thank you so much for tonight. But I want to go to the audience. And people at home watching, next time when you're in Amsterdam, please join us here in Pakhuis. But people here, Volkert, my colleague Volkert, is walking around with a microphone. There are a few rules. He will hold on to the microphone. So you're not allowed to get it. And for the rest, that's the rule. And be nice to each other. First question over there, the person in the front.
Hi, interesting conversation, fascinating. I wanted to make a couple comments that might elaborate on some things that came up that I'm not sure got the full attention. One of them was the comment on poldering earlier, but I'll go back to the first thing, which is how do you scale this thing? Yeah. And I think I've been studying the commons for 20 years. My name is David Zetlin, by the way, and I've written a book about this, and so this topic is really an interesting topic, but I'm coming at it from more of an academic, more general way. And one of the things about scaling is that the commons is hard to scale because you need to kind of know everybody, which is what you found out with the marketplace, right? You need to know them, you have to trust them, because in the end, the way we go through life is a mix of kind of market and bureaucracy and also collective. So we have this mix in our lives. And working in those collectives is really difficult. And Eleanor Ostrom, who's the godmother of all this work that we're talking about, she wrote her dissertation on one water management organization. It's 550 pages. There is no model. There is no generalization, right? Every situation is unique. So in that sense, it's really hard to build a model, to build a framework, because every situation ends up being different. And I think that came up in these different case studies that came in. And it's like, well, how do we put this in this place versus that place? How do we scale it? It's really hard. It doesn't scale, actually. So that's kind of my comment. And poldering, in terms of BeCommoning, is the original BeCommoning example. And no one knows how poldering started because no one wrote it down because it was so long ago.
Poldering is to translate, and then you can respond to that. But poldering, you're talking about poldering, the example of a word in Dutch. Oh, the waterboards.
Yeah, also poldering and waterboards.
But poldering is a Dutch word used that you get in a room and talk to each other with as much people as possible, and in the end you all agree that was the system of government for quite a long time.
Can I give
you want to respond to that?
A quick reaction to that. I disagree with you in that it cannot be scaled. If you look at cities like Copenhagen, Vienna, Zurich, 25% or so of the total housing stock is cooperative housing, and they live pretty much collaboratively. There are a number of historical, socioeconomic system conditions that have allowed this to happen, but that shows you that it is possible. It is really possible. A quarter of the housing stock collaborative.
Yeah,
that's reproduction, not scaling. Right?
That's reproduction, not scaling. Perhaps a semantic discussion, but it is scalable in the sense that you can use the examples in different parts of the society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think my comment would be the same as the Rinka with regard to David's comment, which I think is very valid to discussion. Indeed, what we see also in other sectors other than housing, especially in Netherlands, for example, with farming or also with insurances for ZZP'ers, so self-employed people, that there is a concept that is developed and then multiplied or duplicated multiple times, so there's an organization that basically provides a blueprint, and the communities themselves need to provide the drive and the energy to really get it going on the ground, but they get sort of back office support in terms of lobbying that allows them to sort of take out some of the hassle and reinventing the wheel all over again, so that the processes are very or enabled and facilitated. So that is a way of scaling where you could say, well, not the single initiative itself is scaled, but the concept of commoning itself is scaled with the impact in our society.
It's kind of anathema to the whole concept of commoning, that you try to create a new common monopoly. That is far from it. We want to get is like create and duplicate good ideas from other people to use to create something that is local per se.
And also it's I mean, if you start doing this, we had the idea also for the markets, to sort of try to find a way to replicate the idea of self-organizing this waste system. But then you also need the municipality to facilitate that on a overarching scale. And that's actually what Eleanor Ostrom also learned us, that you sort of not get a centralized government, that you get a sort of a polycentric government, and you get different practices that on different places that are connected to each other by sharing lessons, by sharing ideas, by demanding the same kind of facilitation of an overarching organization, etc.
Yeah. Other people in the room for questions, and Susanna wanted to respond, but if someone wants to ask a question, please raise your hand over there. Susanna?
No, in this regard, I also would like to take attention to this tension that we can read in the literature, that that this kind of common islands can also reinforce inequality in society, because you see that very resourceful citizens can gather and can live in very nice co-housing and do initiatives. They have the resources for that, but maybe other people more deprived of resources, they are not able. And also
so it creates sort of a gated communities with getting people who are not part of the community at a distance, and that is not the kind of society you would like to strive for.
Yeah, also because normally they have the objectives that we will be very inclusive, diverse, and we really would like to connect to the broader neighborhood. These are many times these ambitions of co-housing communities, but in reality, we see a lot of challenges in that. So many times like-minded people get together, so the allocation of new members will be also based on the values what they have, and it will repeat or reproduce the same type of persons that already living in the co-housing. So there is a tension always.
And this could be potentially difficult for society as a whole, because I'm trying to understand what it means where you could when you look at, I think in the United States, but also in the Netherlands, you have, for example, education surrounding with certain communities have the right to create their own education. And then you can have an educational system where they don't talk about evolution, and that it could be completely within this framework of commoning, but it would not be a good idea for society as a whole. Is that, I'm perhaps going too far, but
it's taking a little far.
I took it a bit differently. I understood that if we had more of this, it wouldn't be so exceptional. That's my take on it. That if we would democratize commons.
Yeah, but that's an answer.
You know?
Yeah, democratize commons, that to make sure that
make everyone, make it accessible for people who want to live like this, at least in my field, which is housing, right?
Yeah.
So why does it have to be so exclusive? Well, let's facilitate more people to live like this.
Yes, but one of my colleagues used this word that this will be the new verzuiling. So you will see groups living according to their own principles, and you see islands living next to each other, but it can also produce a polarized society in such a way.
Yeah. So you want more opportunities to work together, and you want, so kinda, I think my example was a good example for your point, I guess, but we'll let that rest. There's a question over there.
Hi. So first of all, thank you. It was a really interesting discussion. My question is more about, so like we talked about scaling this up, maybe like in a more general societal sense. So at the end, we are talking about the societal transformation. And with that coming into play, there is the current paradigm, there is the current capitalist norms, there is the political systems, and then there is the question of how commoning or BeCommoning can fit into that current paradigm. And like also with the market example, we saw that like and also with the framework, the closer we get into the design context, the closer we get into the sort of the systems that are in place, both politically and economically, we bump into a wall. Mm-hmm. So then my question is, where is the place of a more activist approach in commoning? Because we have been talking about the academic approach mostly with the frameworks, with the books, and then like we have the people, the entrepreneurs in the market who are just starting and going for it. So my curiosity is really like, how do these two approaches work together, and like how are they like what's your opinion and how effective they are in initiating the societal transformation?
Can I ask you a quick counter question? You're talking about activist approach, and we've been talking about value-based need for commoning, but also a need-based need for commoning. How's that different? How is activism in that sense? That could be a value, that could be a reason to start a commoning. Or is it a different way?
Yeah, so like what I meant by a more activist approach is basically just being uncomfortable with how the system currently is, and just starting with something instead of going with a more academic approach in which you first like research into it, you think about it, you come up with a way to approach it, and then you start doing.
Well, I don't see the difference, if I may answer quickly. I don't see that difference, really. I think that most of us who do research on this, we are very enthusiastic about it. That's why we are interested in. And I can tell you from my own experience, often my more orthodox housing research colleagues, they think that I'm an activist. They think that, you know, with my work, I'm promoting this. I surely am, but I'm putting my values at the front, and I use scientific methods, scientific ways to research it. I'm not blind to the misgivings, but I think we operate in this field in in a gray zone. I mean, how can you distinguish understanding and explaining what happens with commons from actually, how do you say, trying to promote it? I don't see such a, stark difference. I don't know about the rest.
Yeah, from my perspective is, I mean, what we're trying to do is really create this dialogue, because also, for example, on the public administration side, definitely on the city level, municipality level, there are a lot of public servants, civil servants that also see the boundaries that you, or feel the boundaries in their work that you described, and the frustrations that Joachim also touched upon, of course. So, and they're very willing to think with collectives and work with them. So I think there's a great willingness for dialogue and to think together how we can come to solutions and enable collectives to grow and also be available or accessible for everybody. So, but of course there need to be people, like we all stressed, there need to be people who carry those communities, who do it. And I don't think maybe that's per se the role of the people sitting here around the table, but of course there need to be people who feel empowered and who feel driven by the values to create these communities. So I think there is definitely right now this gray zone that Darinka also said, between the market solutions that we're used to and the public solutions that we're used to, and we're in a different setup in this, where all these players need to come together to give or create space for these collective solutions. So that I think that would be my reply to that.
Susanna?
Yes, probably the question referred also to this kind of definition in the literature, when you have this post-capitalistic way of organizing, so a way with companies, a way with the state, everything, just the citizens, like. And I think we should be more realistic, and that's why I really loved your examples, that you show the local entrepreneurs. They are very important in our daily lives, and they try to do something. Maybe they also need their business model, but they try to do something for society. We cannot do without state and entrepreneurs. And another example that where these photos were made, in the Haburt in Bijmer. This community, mostly from Ghanese and Nigerian people living in social housing, they are in our field lab, and we work with them. So they are really, they feel threatened by the gentrification and the development of the municipality, that they have to leave the Bijmer, where they really love to live. So they organize themselves, and they hope to get a piece of land there where they can build their collective residence together. So. Yeah.
And Bijlmer, of course, is a neighborhood in Amsterdam Zuidoost, one of the boroughs here in the city, which is quite diverse and a specific build of a society over there. One main question.
Can I add something? Because with it on Plein 45, there was a lot of activism, but I think that it it's also about how you see change is going to happen on the long term. And if these entrepreneurs just focus on getting things done for themselves on their own square, there are a lot of limits to what they can actually achieve, because there's a lot of societal initiatives. They organize a lot of things in the public sphere, and up to a certain degree, when they are not competing with public services of the municipality, for example, everybody's cheering, everybody's really happy. But at some point, they want to do something in a different way, which competes with how the municipality or another institution is already organizing it, or how a market party is already organizing it.
So it's activistic in a sense that it's different than it's used in the past.
Now, what I want to say is that when you reach that point, when you become a threat for the status quo of municipal service or market parties or whatsoever, they are much more powerful normally, and achieving something through just activism, just being against it and trying to organize it in a different way without collaborating, it's not going to. You're not going to achieve it, I think. And what we try to do is to use those examples of those kind of initiatives to offer the municipality, for example, lessons about how they may want to change their own organization. Because the municipality, they are saying that, okay, we want to invest in the commons in Amsterdam. Amsterdam needs to become an example of a commons city in the world. But they just say that without realizing the consequences for its own organization. So what we are trying to do is helping these kind of initiatives by explaining to the municipality as well what the consequences are for their own organization. And they can start thinking about, maybe we can change the organization, maybe we shouldn't change the organization, maybe we should change our ambitions on the commons level. So what we try to do is to canalize that activism towards a moment where change can actually happen or not.
Yeah. There is, I want to ask many questions, but I'm not going to do that. We're going to set it for a different time. There is another question from the...
Mine is like a pseudo follow-up question to this topic. I think, in my opinion, where the municipalities and the already established systems come short is, yes, there is research on it. Yes, there are willing parties to do it. But then, as you said, there are already existing systems. And, it's always more comfortable to stick with whatever works, sort of works, causes a crisis. I don't know, I'm an international student. So, yes, there are a lot of problems on this regard. But my question is then, how do we, yes, change will eventually come. Where is the sweet spot of these parties meeting up? How can we actually facilitate this change to, I don't know, speed up, kind of get together? Because if we look at the progress, yes, all of you have worked on many great projects on this topic. But then, when we asked you, for example, were there tangible results? Of course they weren't, because this is a short period of time for a municipality to change. What do you think? How can we facilitate this further? What would you say?
Would first go to Joachim?
I don't think there's a sweet spot.
Yeah.
Because I think what you're dealing with is administrative traditions that took 100 years to become part of this organization. So they are thoroughly imprinted in this organization. And there's a lot of important principles behind it as well. I mean, principle of equality, for example. You have to sort of rethink how to organize a government around the principle of equality in a way that is not making use of standardization and centralization. Okay. So that's, it's a lot of work. It's hard work, and it's a long breath. Do you say it in that way? I mean, it takes...
Comes across. The other people, quick response. We're running out of time, and I see a question over there, and I want to go to the audience. Quick response. And Volkert, if you go to the person over there.
Another question.
No, I think it needs a variety of factors to stimulate and accelerate. So the institutional context, so municipalities do need to understand that they have to relax and ease their rules, making it possible, but also financial actors to let, for instance, co-housing groups get a loan much easier and not in a framework as they were companies. So there are this kind of barriers, but also I think that this kind of professionals who really start to work, to get engaged in this as a new profession, when they understand all the steps adjusting to the specific resource, they can be accelerators in these processes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. I would like to refer to two topics that were coming from the audience. And I think first one is that there was the question like how the activist approach and the researchers approach comes together. And the comment would be, I would say, let's bring them here to the table. And that's how it can come together, of course. They're representatives of collectives could bring us the perspective. And the second one, I think we are also, I'm coming also from the housing, let's say, dimension in commoning. And what we see, of course, the biggest challenges is the context we're dealing with. And what I hear here all together, and I think it's mainly about seeing the third dimension. So if we think of the public and the citizens as individuals, but collectives are not yet even seen as a party to talk to. And basically, if the collectives are being treated like companies or like private parties by the municipality, we would never get over this step. And what we and me also as a part of Housing Cooperative, what we're facing is that being seen as a professional party, and we cannot deliver on that. And this is something that this term is not kind of seen there as a third sector or another sector in conversation.
Do you want to? Who wants to respond to that?
All I can do is nod and think, this is really, I think that's a very good description and makes it very tangible that it's a different way of doing things, right? So, and it can be in many different sectors, but it's really, I'm also not saying it's the solution to everything, and as Darinka also said, it's not the solution to every situation, for everything, but it needs to be recognized that it's a valid solution for certain situations, for certain wishes and values, and that it needs to be seen and accepted as such. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you.
I can say just a small thing connecting both in last interventions. I think that the change and I feel uncomfortable with the system because I see that it's not working anymore. So I believe in transitions paradigm in this sense, right? I don't believe in a radical transformation, let's dismantle everything, because I think for a lot of people the system actually works. And there are a lot of people who want to live in their own house and they're happy with it. And I also believe in free choice. So,
and
let
are you
people...
talking then about the way we live in houses, or are you talking about the economic system, or are you talking about the democratic system?
It's connected. It's very
It's
much
all connected. Okay.
Yes,
okay.
Because the housing system is very much linked to our capitalist neoliberal way of seeing housing not only as shelter but also as a commodity, and therein lies the problem. We cannot think of commoning when we are actually chained to this way of looking at our homes as an investment, the biggest investment of every person. So collectives in housing are every day faced with the choice: what will happen when my children want to find a place? I don't have an asset base to give them the money. So you see, it's a systemic problem. The commodification of housing is bigger than, just wanted to live as a community. And this is why I said earlier on, the housing crisis is not going to be solved by collaborative housing. Collaborative living is something that can add value to our experience of living together. But the problem is bigger, is macro. This is something we cannot exhaust here, but I want to recognize those two dimensions.
Yeah, in an evening like tonight, there are almost so many topics we want to go really in depth to. There is room for one more question from the audience if there is a burning question. Otherwise, we'll... no, there is not. The roundup. So we are going to talk, of course, more about this topic of commoning and how to create that in a basic way. But what you're saying is a society shouldn't be viewed as a company, and the housing system shouldn't be viewed as a market, but as something that should help us all and to make sure that we all can participate. As I said in the beginning, the second episode will be on November 9th here in Pakhuis de Zwager in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and it will be on situated design. Can you tell a bit about what kind of topics we're going to talk about then, where we have to think about?
Yes, it is going to be actually about the how, about the methods, approaches that you can trigger or provocate communities to articulate, to help them articulate their values, to help them methods, how they can discuss or deliberate on common issues. So my colleague Tara Karpinski, she also made these photos. Yeah. She is embedded in these cases in our field labs, for instance, also in the Bijlmer. And she has made different installations and interventions, working with the community to help them bring all the topics that they are really anxious about to the surface. So that I think this is really crucial that we talk also about the methods that we can use in this process.
Thank you. And thank you all. And can I have a warm applause for Susanne Temor, for Derinka Tjiske, for Joachim Meerkerk and Lucas Held. And of course, a big thank you for Volkert and Natasha and Martijn de Waal, who is at home. Thank you so much as well. As I said, this was a Pakhuis de Zwager program as a part of the Charging the Commons project, which is a project of the Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences and the Avant Center of Applied Research for Art. Thank you for tonight and see you soon. Bye.